Ever cut a board too short, snapped a screw, or even clamped the life out of a joint? Most beginning woodworkers waste time, ruin good boards, and even put themselves at risk. In this video, I'll share 10 essential tips that will save you frustration, keep you safe, and make woodworking in a small shop way more enjoyable. Let's start with accuracy, because nothing is more frustrating than making a perfect cut in the wrong place. Most beginners grab a pencil, but here's the problem. Even a sharp pencil leaves a fat line, and that means some guesswork. A cheap marking knife, like this one, gives you a crisp, exact line that your saw blade or your chisel can follow. It's like upgrading your cuts instantly just for a few bucks. Now, accuracy is great, but nothing matters if you don't work safely. One of the easiest safety habits you can build is this. Always unplug your tool before changing the blade or bit. A table saw, a bandsaw, a router, it does not matter. It takes 2 seconds and it can prevent one of the most common and dangerous shop accidents. And if your tools are battery powered, like a router or a table saw, or even your miter saw, take the battery out. It doesn't matter, work safely. All right, let's switch to design. Most beginning projects look boxy because straight cuts are easy, but curves add personality. A simple draftsman circle template or some French curves like these can instantly make your designs more interesting. You lay it down, you trace it, you cut it out, and suddenly your shelf or cutting board looks custom designed instead of store-bought. Okay, let's try to make your table saw a little bit easier to use. Most table saws come with a stock throat plate that is very wide for the blade. And the reason it's very wide for the blade is because you want to be able to tilt the blade to make angled cuts. But on my table saw, I make a lot of straight cuts, 90 degrees. I don't do many angled cuts. I have other tools to do angled cuts. So I went and bought from the manufacturer of my saw what we call a zero clearance insert plate. Basically, it's a solid piece of plastic that had a cutout for the riving knife but no cutout for the blade. I would lower my blade when I got it, put it in the throat plate thing, slide my fence over to hold it down, power on my saw, and slowly raise the blade up through the plastic throat plate. This creates a very thin cutout that's about the same width as the kerf of the blade. And what this does for me is two things. One is while I'm cutting some wood, since there's more support around where the cutting action happens, I get less tear out on my wood. The second thing is if I'm cutting thin pieces like something like this, which was edge banding for a project I did recently, the edge banding, if I use the stock plate, could either dip into the wide gap as I cut it and jam, or it could get sucked into my dust collection and get all chewed up and make a really bad noise. I don't have any of those problems with a zero clearance insert plate. I highly recommend that you get one or make one for your saw as soon as possible. Okay, while we're still at the table saw, let's talk about another tip. Most table saws come with a fence and a tape system for you to rip boards to width. A lot of people trust the tape after they install it with their saw. I don't. What I do is I use the tape to get close. So let's say this board's actually 6 1/4 and I wanted to rip it down to 5 3/4. What I would do is on my tape, I would get real close to 5 3/4 and I wouldn't lock the thing down. Then I'd get a ruler that I trust to be accurate, and I take it and I line it up with the edge of the fence to the edge of the cutting side of the tooth on my blade. And then I tap it until it's exactly where I want it. Then I lock the fence down. I never trust the tape. I always use the tape on the table saw to get me close, but ruler for the final dimension. All right, while we're talking about measurements, when you're making a project, when you use a tape measure or a steel rule, make sure you use that rule consistently. Don't switch back and forth. Even among the same kind of brands, like these two Stanley tapes, they're a hair different when you use them for layout. And if you switch back and forth, you might get mistakes that compound, and you'll find out that your project isn't square or it's off a little bit, and you won't understand why. Even tape measures between different brands, they don't line up. So pick one, use it consistently through your project. The same thing with rulers. If you're using it to make small inside measurements or on the table saws we just talked about, use the same ruler consistently. That way, you know that the ruler you're using, the measurements will always be the same every time you make them. Early in my woodworking career, I used to watch a lot of woodworkers on TV, on PBS, HGTV. And a lot of the people that were making projects on those shows were using drywall screws to assemble their projects. Now, drywall screw is not meant for wood. It's meant for drywall. That's why it's called a drywall screw. It does not have a shank. They're very soft. They can snap very easy. The benefit to them are they're very cheap. You can get a big box full of them for hardly any money at all. But you should not build your project with these. You need to go and get actual wood screws. Wood screws are designed to go into wood. They have a shank. They're much more tougher. They're hard to break, and they hold in soft and hardwoods much better. So do yourself a favor. Don't start cheap. Go right to the wood screws. Your projects will go together better and last longer. Here's a glue trick. If you clamp too hard, you'll squeeze out all the glue and starve the joint. That makes the joint weaker, not stronger. The goal is even, firm pressure with just a small bead of glue squeezing out of the joint. I used to make this mistake quite a bit when I was beginning my woodworking journey, especially using wood from the big box stores that was already pre-cut. I was assuming that the joints were flat and square, and I'd put glue on them, clamp them, and then over clamp them to get the joint to come together, not realizing that all I was doing is squeezing out the glue and not making the joint stronger. Here's a good woodworking tip. When cutting a groove or a dado in a style for a frame and panel build, the groove often needs to be centered within the style. So what I like to do is take the piece, use my fence, and get it as centered with the blade as possible, and then lock the fence down. Okay? Then I run it through the saw one time. After I run it through, I flip it end for end, like that, 180 degrees, and put it back down and run it through again. This guarantees that my groove will be centered. Here's a neat trick. Let's say that I have to divide this plywood panel into 4 equal width stripes. I would put it down on my bench, I get a ruler, and I would place the ruler on one of the corners and line it up with the corner of the panel and the corner of the ruler. And then I would move the ruler diagonally along the other edge, the opposite edge, until I got to a number that was easily divisible by the number of strips I want. So in this case, I want 4. So what I did is I moved the ruler diagonally until the one end of the ruler is on the corner and one end is on the 20-inch mark. Then I take a pencil and tick off the division I want. So I want to divide this into 4, so 20 divided by 4 is 5. So I'd put a tick mark on 5, tick mark on 10, tick mark on 15. And that would give me 4 equally divided widths of the board without actually measuring the board at all. No hard math, it's just easy peasy lemon squeezy. So those are 10 beginner woodworking tips that will save you time, money, and frustration in the shop. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like and subscribe buttons so that I can continue to bring more videos to you on this kind of content. And if you want a project that you can start this weekend, check out one of these projects linked up in the screen above. Until next time, happy woodworking.